Hello, everyone. Holly here with Reality Sandwich. Today I am joined by Michou, and we are going to be chatting a little bit about how psychedelics have been moving through Michou's life and, get into the details of their experience with psychedelics and particularly magic mushrooms. So, welcome, Michou. Thank you for being here today. You want to
Thank
tell us a little about yourself?
Absolutely. And my pronouns are probably she and her. I'm proudly female, and this is work I've been doing for my 54 years here on this lovely planet of ours. I'm here to share a little bit about my experience with psychedelics, starting out back in 1985 when I was 15, going to Grateful Dead shows out in Northern California. I come from Half Moon Bay, California, and I grew up going to a lot of really beautiful Dead shows when I was from about 15 till 19, 18, 19. I had the luxury of psychedelics being in my life very plentifully. I had access to a lot of things, but I really gravitated towards, I felt mushrooms and LSD. I felt very aligned with both of those in different ways. Mushrooms were hard to come by, and they were always crap when we got them. They were always in a bag. They looked like sticks. You couldn't even tell they were actually mushrooms. They just looked like something of earth. But LSD was plentiful, and so we did a lot of that, and that was something that I really appreciated the joyfulness of it. It took away the sucky part of being a girl who looks like this in the 70s and in the 80s and not having a lot of community for that or care for that. So LSD brought me to a lot of courage and a lot of self-acceptance and self-appreciation, as well as the Grateful Dead. The two of those came together for me to really just accept and step in, right? And just to become who I am in this space right now. So fast forward to, out of 2000 or 1989, lost my connection with psychedelics and went into a lot of alcohol consumption. Lost my connection with, I didn't realize it then, but looking back, I lost my connection with the tools that were giving me access to have courage and compassion. And instead I turned to alcohol and other things, other behaviors, and really dove into some big shadow aspects of myself for about 38 years, really. I just became my shadow and really leaned into seeking validation from my appearance and having a lot of behaviors that weren't really very savory, and just really had a lot of non-accountability and non-showing up across the board. And I had the misfortune of having an accident in 2017 in a kitchen on the coast of Massachusetts where I injured both of my shoulders and was consequently unable to work, right? So come, this was in November, January 2018, mushrooms found me. And basically I took an eighth of golden teachers, maybe more like 4 grams on January 3rd. And it was for fun. It was just to go back to having a good time, right? This was 2018. There was no such thing as an intention, right? Or any kind of prep, setting. It's that. We don't know what that is. But I'm taking these golden teachers that were really lovely that my friend had grown. And I had a really awesome time. And the next few weeks were expansive for me enough to where it felt like I should do it again because I had nothing. I was really looking at being homeless in a few months and I was stressing out. I was injured and I was in a lot of pain and I didn't have any options. And I had just moved to Massachusetts and sold everything in my life to get there from across the country. And so I was really like crisis looming mode. I'm looking over the fence at imminent crisis here. And so I started to realize in that in that last, what was it, a couple weeks after my journey, that there was something to this that was needed in my chaotic, about to be really super chaotic life, right? So my friend essentially told me that these are here for me whenever I need them. An ounce, family discount. Whenever you need them, please reach out. And so I came back to Massachusetts. Mushrooms came with me. And from that point on, I started to, on a fairly monthly basis, doing work with mushrooms to where I could macrodose, right? And have this experience that was kind of hard in the time of the journey itself, but the days following were very expansive. I've always been very connected. I'm very psychic, and I've ran from the knowing that I had innately in my entire life, because being a woman who looks like this was already enough. The knowing also was, I didn't want the responsibility. I didn't feel like I was worthy of that, right? Of the knowing and of what I was supposed to do with that. Um, lot of self disbelief kind of stuff of who I was and what I was meant to do. So I felt what was really nice is to be connected in my time of macrodosing on a monthly basis to the awareness of the truth that was beyond that, right? And so I started doing macrodoses once a month, and it really kind of brought me to a place of grace. And I became homeless in April of 2018. I had to move back to California. I had to move in with my mother, which was very difficult at 48 years old. It was very humbling. And California was not holding space for me for surgeries or anything that I needed to do, but I was still doing mushrooms, getting a lot of insights. Now I'm starting to realize that there's something at work here. Something's shifting in my own mind, my consciousness, my psychic abilities. I'm feeling very enhanced, and to the point of just clear knowing, just knowing cars in front of me. This car's about to pull in front of me. Sure enough, here we go. Feeling in tune with people's energies, and and not fully intuiting what they're going to say next, but just about getting close, right? And so I keep doing these monthly macrodoses, and in 2019, I ended up basically having to go to Indiana. Went to Indiana, had a whole horrific situation happen there. Ended up having a Kundalini awakening in Indiana on 3.5 grams of golden teachers. I'd been taking monthly macrodoses for a year and a half ish. And I think the neuroplasticity in my mind was at an all time high. And I had a visitation of 4 white light entities that appeared in the room that I was in. I had a projector at that time, animated fractals from Electric Sheep, right? 10 hours long. And I'd put that on the wall, and I had this awesome playlist where I was just like epic playlist. No lyrics, down tempo, cool, whatever, like all kinds of awesome stuff. And I would put these fractals on and put this music on and just 7, 8, 9 hours just go and have these incredibly, now I'm connecting to very different things. I'm connecting to, I guess, collective consciousness, universal truth. At sometimes people are saying, I had a couple of times people would join me to take with me, and I was glowing. Very wild stuff is happening to me, and people are like, whoa, you're really getting out there, right? And so this awakening happens, and it really kind of blew me. It blew me out of my identity. It blew me out of my personal reality of who I was and what I was. And then I was homeless after that, like 3 months later. I had a shoulder surgery, a big major shoulder surgery, and then had to come back to Massachusetts and live out of my Trailblazer for the rest of 2019. I lived in the woods in my Trailblazer, and then also part-time at my weed dealer's house, and which was a gracious act, and I was grateful for that generosity. And in that time, I started having visions of the future, of essentially the reality of the awakening that was coming. I saw collective suffering, and I saw millions of people coming with these grievous looks and their hands out and just looking for help, right? And not realizing, right, in my awakening, I had been essentially reminded that I know the way of consciousness and psychedelics, and that it's a way of essentially its truth of universal proportion, right? And so when we're operating from a place of triggered trauma or reaction, we're coming from unhealed trauma, we're coming from integrated shadow aspects of ourselves, right? And so when we take psychedelics, we're being brought to the forefront of our ancestral trauma, our unhealed lived experience trauma, and that I have these knowledges, these knowings, and in that time, I made an agreement to show up to provide safe access to people to be able to acquire what they would need to do work with mushrooms. They would come, I would know who they were because they would come to me. I'm not here to advertise that they're going to find me, essentially. And to really get to work on learning about mycology immediately and what it would take to grow a mushroom. One single mushroom, right? Like what it would take. And then I kept taking them monthly basis, and I started to realize that I'm going to need to know how to grow a lot of them because there's a difference between all of them. And I'm going to need to understand the way that each of them work with each of the mental health, the addiction challenges, the personalities, the personal nuances of humanism, right? And so I started growing. I started with, I plugged my mind, crammed my mind into Reddit, YouTube videos. I just saturated my life for 2 years and read everything, watched everything, interacted, asked questions, filled my brain with as much as I could. And I decided that it was important to know what grain spawn was the best. So I made 2 different grain spawns. I made my own whole oats. I made my own wild bird seed. And then I went Uncle Ben's just because it was wild. And I said, what the hell? This sounds insane. I want to try it just because it seems like, well, who knows? And if it works, then cool. Let's see what happens, right? Because at the time in 2021, that was a big deal, right? Uncle Ben's was like, oh, you can grow mushrooms out of a bag of Uncle Ben's. So I'm like, well, let's see. Let's get a case of Uncle Ben's, right? So 18 bags. I started with 6 jars of whole oats, 6 jars of wild bird seed, and then 18 bags of Uncle Ben's. And then I thought I need to know what strains are off the bat. So 5 different strains. And then in a tent, right? A tented environment, I wanted to know what volumes were better, right? So I tried a couple different size shoe boxes and then a couple different size mono tubs, modded and unmodded, and had 100% success on every strain with zero contamination. And the mushrooms were just exploding out of my tent. And it was as if I was meant to grow them, obviously, right? Clearly. The
How'd the
sign,
Uncle Ben's do? Did the Uncle Ben's do really well?
no, because, and here's what I learned. So, what the Uncle Ben's was the least performing because of the lack of nutrient levels, because it's a processed rice, I want to say. The wild birdseed was the top because it had the most sustainably long lasting nutrients for the longest flushes and the
Oh,
bigger mushrooms, right? So fast forward to today, I've grown 20 different varieties of psychedelic mushrooms, and I've learned these varieties, and I've been, of course, helping my clients around the country experience them, right? And I've learned specifics around all of them, right? And I've learned what strains are exacerbating things like anxiety, PTSD, trauma, such and so forth, and what strains are actually perfect for these people, right? Specifically. So I have, as far as that's concerned, and then I've also brought into my life the last few years microdosing LSD, and what the LSD piece is, I've learned there's a theory I've developed, or it's been brought to my attention apparently from wherever. Right, I pulled it out of the ether.
you
That
became aware?
fair, thank you. That there's a correlation of the way that mushrooms and LSD show up in our bodies, and it's because of the origin of their creation. Now, here we go. Mushrooms are targeting root chakra because they're from the earth. They're from the dark. Mycelium is in the dark, so they target the root chakra. They target ancestral trauma, inner child, or dark elements. They target our darkness basically, and they help us to integrate our darkness and to basically make peace and have forgiveness and compassion for the elements of ourselves that our societies have deemed shameful and judgment worthy, right, and unacceptable, right? And so LSD, also fungal, but in the sun it grows on rye. It targets crown chakra, third eye chakra, throat chakra, and cognition and articulation. And these are dovetailed together. They work together synergistically. So I'm watching my clients now who've worked with microdosing mushrooms for the last, I don't know, a couple of years, and they reach a plateau, and then here comes microdosing of LSD, and it's like, bing, the lights come on. And what it really feels like to me is that in my own experience is that mushrooms blew me out of the water and awakened me in ways that I didn't ask for. I wasn't looking for. I'm already here this way though. I just needed the nudge, right? And I didn't have the ability to articulate some of these concepts that were just ineffable, right? It was almost like mushrooms gave me all these beautiful um, I should say, biodegradable balloons, right? That like will compost down back into the earth and not cause problems, right? But there's beautiful balloons of knowledge and wisdom and truth in this beautiful vaulted ceiling that I can't get to. And LSD now becomes the strings that I can now pull them down and admire and use them and work with them, right? So it's articulation to what the mushrooms are really, bringing forth. And for the people that I'm working with, they're having huge things happen with them. They're having big realizations and a lot of movement in the ability to have more compassion, right, and to have more understanding of the fact and the truth that they're in a spiritual awakening, and that this is not a destination of feeling better. This is a lifestyle now being brought upon. So, yeah,
I really, really love that comparison of how mushrooms are a root chakra and LSD is a crown chakra, because when people always ask me the comparison that, how do they rank? What's your experience like one versus the other? I'm like, dude, mushrooms like make me go like this. Like it's all about me. It's time for me to the shit that I haven't wanted to address. But LSD is like,
Let's go out.
yeah, like I want to see and be seen. I want to move and
Hey,
dance and
ah,
share. So
yeah.
I've never heard anybody explain it related to the chakras before. That's really cool.
It's your child. I feel like LSD is your, okay, so mushrooms are your shadow and LSD is your inner child,
There you go. Yeah, that's
right?
totally true.
And
That's
so
why mushrooms
mushrooms,
are so scary sometimes.
mushrooms are like, I have so, I have been broken down to fucking rubble. Just devastated, just destroyed, and then had to pick myself back up and spend weeks in the fetal position because of the realities of some of these experiences that were absolutely necessary and long overdue, right? But LSD, what I love about what LSD does after these mushroom experiences is it comes in and it's opening the curtains and shines a light on what you've been shown and really helps you to articulate and make more meaning of the integration aspects of it. It's badass, really.
Yeah, and like softens the edges of the blow from the mushrooms
Much
too.
more heart opening, much more joy, a lot more compassion. Mushrooms can be
Yeah.
kind of, and not very nice, not very kind. LSD is kinder. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, true. Yeah, the mushrooms definitely tend
There's
to
much,
show you what you need, whether
there's
you like it or not.
a, here you go. You're looking at this. You can't wait. You have the
So
blind.
take me back to 2018 when you came back to mushrooms. What I mean, 4 grams, that's a lot of mushrooms. Like
I
what
would
had you
know. I would take hits of LSD. We would take mushrooms and LSD. We were always doing all the things. So I grew up in that space of going out in altered states, like being an altered states person, right? That was where I found joy in being brought to different layers of myself, right? And as a mystic, right? My revelations of these last 7 years, I'm a psychic mystic. I'm here to help people with mystic properties, with consciousness expansion, with aspects of self-realization and self-mastery that come from psychedelic usage, right? And as a child, I started cutting my teeth at 15 years old doing this, right? And evolved myself into this woman who at this point in this stage in her life, um, I've stepped into my brilliance and into my power, right? And into my masterminding of now a mushroom empire. I have community. I have integration groups that I do. I do an integration group every Tuesday morning now for the last 7 months. Between 10 and 25 people come. Clients of mine, clients of my colleague. We do a co-host. Um, my life is exploding. This is my life's work. And I followed my intuition for this entire thing from mushrooms, from big doses, right? And blasting off into outer space and literally being brought to the most humblest places that I could find within myself, I believe. Right. And yeah,
so what have been some of the, these monthly macrodose trips with shrooms that you're taking? What have been some of these big revelations for you, or what you mentioned, um avoid, dealing with your alcohol consumption and things like that as some of the foundational lessons you learned. How did the mushrooms show you that that was like, hey, you're done?
that was the first that was taken from me was just I woke up 7 months of doing monthly macrodosing and just didn't want to drink. I knew that day was going to be a non-drinking day, and I wanted to instead have a nice lunch and then take a nap and do something self-care ish. Maybe because I was feeling tired, I wanted to have a mellow day, and drinking just wasn't the answer for that. And I didn't ask for that, and at first it was alarming and a little bit unnerving because that was my go-to and I didn't choose it. And so at first I was like, I don't know if I trust this. And I ended up doing a series of experiments with alcohol over a course of 3 different years. Um, well, one different, it was basically from 2018, it was basically October 23rd, 2018 until probably about a year and some change later. I just didn't drink. I just trusted it. And then I started getting very uncomfortable by the fact that it wasn't my choice. And I wanted to understand that if it was truly mushrooms that took alcohol from me, Let's find out. And I want to also be able to recreate this, because if I can, now I can potentially help other people. But I need to do this now 3 times, though, for it to be a viable thing. So I set out these last, I mean, from 2000 and the end of 2019 was when I started to drink again, forcing myself back into it. It made me nauseous the first couple of times. I literally threw up both times. I tried a couple different days apart. Couldn't drink beer, right? I found out that I can't have alcohol like that ever again. No more beer for me. That was my drink of choice. So you can't drink your drink of choice. But what you will be able to do over time, right? I did 3 different experiments, bringing myself back to daily drinking after a couple of months, and then doubling up my efforts in a shorter span of time to basically obliterate the interest of alcohol. And then repeat, and then repeat. Now what I'm left, I certainly can like to drink. And then there's a lot of times when I just don't want to drink. And I can drink to a certain point, but I can't go over that point anymore. I can't go to a place of obliteration. I can't go to a place of where I used to go. I can't go back. And I think there's a part of me that subconsciously was trying to see if I could go back, because a lot of what I was shown and still am shown is a lot to swallow, right? It's a lot to be faced with. When you're in a room of people and you're someone who knows things that most people do not, that's a lot to fucking carry. No joke, right? Even in psychedelic circles, that's the part that gets wild, is in psychedelic circles, there's still people that there's a lot of this element of what this is about that people don't know about yet still. And so it's hard to be the one who knows after being the one who shouldn't be here because of the way she looks, right? I don't deserve to live because I'm a monstrosity, right? This was the narrative when I was a kid. So the work that I've been doing lately, the higher I climb, the taller the shadows, right? So I am constantly like, oh, lately it's just self-worth on self-worth on self-worth, and constantly reminders. I mean, I'll show you, I have a little thing that I put, always reminding me constantly, right, to not give in to my fear, right, of that I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, this is too much. It's, you know what I mean? Like, it's, hold on, I just clicked my, here we go. It's the narrative of culture that doesn't want evolution or doesn't want consciousness expansion, right? Because the threat to the American value system. So what I stumbled upon, right, completely accidentally or not, I don't know, maybe it was the right timing, right? But I had visions of my future that have all come true, speaking in front of auditoriums now. I've been invited to speak at 6 different conferences this year, 2 in Miami, 2 in Manhattan, 1 in Paris, and 1 in Dubai, on spirituality and mental health, right? And consciousness
Cool.
and health and psychedelics and all that kind of stuff. So there's so much, and it's a big deal. Yeah.
That's very cool.
There's
Do you see yourself like continuing with these macro doses of mushrooms monthly? Is it just like this is your medicine? This
I
is
haven't taken a macrodose of mushrooms probably in 2 years. I don't need it.
mm,
I microdose LSD because it's lately I'm in creation of communities now, and I'm working with the emergence of the policy making for Massachusetts psychedelic policy. So I'm on the precipice of getting involved with that, and so what I really want to do is fine tune my story, fine tune my language, fine tune the way that I speak to this entire realization, this entire truth. So psychedelics, I feel like mushroom macrodosing cracked me open and helped me access things that I was not able to. And I do smaller mesodoses, which I really like, of certain strains. And that's a nice way to kind of dip into the space and to connect to my heart and connect to my humility in ways that feel manageable, and I don't need to go so far out. Because when I do, the mushrooms are like, you know what there is. You know, you've seen what there is, and we're not showing you anything else because you know. So please stop looking.
yeah.
It's already here, right? We are, every single person that comes to you has something inside of them that they're afraid to hold. They're afraid to own. The power that we have, the beings that we are, we're fucking supernatural beings, right? And that's a fucking lot to swallow. That's a big deal. And people have a hard time with that. I have a hard time with that. This girl over here. I'm over here going, fuck me. What the fuck happened to my life? Who's Michou? She doesn't even exist anymore. I'm mushrooms now, and integration now, right? And therapy talk. Like 7 people a day I'm talking to, and trying to figure out like the business end. I'm not a business person. What the fuck is that? So I'm having to do all this stuff. It's like forcing me. This whole path is like forcing me to show up every day, every minute of the day, right? Didn't want to get my haircut today because I didn't want to go into public. Oh well, go anyway, right? All the things. It's like all the things. I'm not good enough. And it's just, this is a birthing process. This last week, contractions week, right? It's a week of contractions, lots of them. So you ebb and flow, you bob and weave, right? You feel out, you're being shown what's being brought to you, and you just flow with it, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot. Yeah,
It's interesting how you say almost like, the mushrooms, like we don't have anything else to show you right now. I've heard that from other people, or people always ask me, "Oh, well, you sat with ayahuasca, will you do it again?" I'm like, I don't know. I have not been called to do that. I am not looking for anything else.
well, that's the point, is that there's a train of thought, and it's a seeking. There's a destination addiction afoot in this path, and people are
Yeah.
seeking awakenings and breakthroughs and all these things to fix and cure, right?
Yeah, I think that I went through maybe a period of time like that when I was younger where,
Yeah,
I'd been doing psychedelics recreationally for a long time and then started to maybe use them a little bit with more intention,
yeah,
but came to realize that, I think I was looking for something, right? I was getting more comfortable with higher doses. I'm like, there's just something right there. Like, if
like
I could just figure this one, yeah, like, what's the secret, guys? Like, let me in on it. I know that I'm just on the cusp. And then it became very clear to me. It was actually like I was having tea with this woman, um, who's a friend of the mother of some friends of mine. She's a gifted psychic. And we're just having tea. And out of nowhere, she just says, you don't really need all those psychedelics to get you where you think you're trying to go. I was like, okay, I needed to hear that. And you're totally right. And it shifted my perspective. I'm like, gosh, what am I chasing?
just
What am
mindfulness.
I trying to access that I can't find right now within myself? Like, again, it's like
Yeah,
psychedelics open the door, but we have to keep walking through it. And that
exactly.
requires our own 2 feet.
Some of us are blown through the door without asking and are now finding themselves on this planet of fucking accountability that is just like, whoa, this is humongous and it's everywhere now. It's my entire life. Like I have to really own this place that I have accepted, right? It was like a moral agreement. I felt I made a moral agreement in that awakening to show up here and to show up. And now that someone's turning the fire up underneath the stove, and I'm just like, holy shit! Like I didn't think it was gonna happen this fast, and it just ramped up. Like, well, and when you've got therapists and doctors referring their clients to you, that's when it gets frightening. When I'm in that place now for these last couple of years, and I'm just like, holy fuck,
You're like, me? Okay.
this is so scary. This is scary. It's a big deal. I feel like sometimes I'm in my dad's cowboy boots and I'm clomping around. I'm 10 years old and I'm like trying to, but I already know all this stuff. This is stuff that I innately know this. So it's not like that, right? There's two sides. We're always, I don't know, I'm in contact with both my inner child. We're side by side constantly, right? She's terrified and I'm like, we got to keep going. I'm sorry. I know it's scary, but it's actually going to get a lot better. So we just got to keep going. Here's an ice cream. Here's some
Yeah.
sunshine. Here's your
Yeah, you're
dog
gonna be okay.
video game, right? Or here's something that you love, right? Here's some time to time out.
I'd love to hear a little bit about what you learned or your theories about some of the effects of different strains of mushrooms. That's something I'm super curious about, and I've had a very hard time finding any kind of concrete evidence, and it's so anecdotal, right? You do kind of have to chase it, and you do have to try things. What have you been learning from trying different strains, or from your clients reporting back?
There's a lot. So my personal experience, I've tried several different strains myself, and I can certainly say that a cube is not a cube. That is a myth from, I don't know where that came from, but that's false. Different strains have different energies. They have different personalities, basically. And so when you're looking at strains, and now there's been so much cloning and replication, there's a whole slew of different types of mushrooms. But when you're learning about the origin of them, you're going to have the understanding of the behavior of them or the characteristics of them. So, for example, I'll paint the picture. Two most popular strains are Golden Teacher and Penis Envy, probably, right? Golden Teacher is a very spiritual, sometimes very harsh and strict strain. It's very mystical, and it's going to pull your supernatural aspects out. The people who have I feel, who have less resistance, right? Who are more open or more raw, or who, in my case, life had beaten me down enough that I was pretty raw. So when you're not resisting, golden teachers will take you very deep spiritual places, very deep philosophical places. It has mild body load, so that can be tricky for some people. It definitely is can produce nausea. Um, it gives some pretty beautiful visuals. Has a lot of, as I said, a lot of mysticism, a lot of philosophy, a lot of higher consciousness aspects. This is the strain that I used exclusively in the time that I was doing it for just about 2 years, and it blew me in my consciousness wide open. And now I'm stuck here in this place in super consciousness now. So this is where I live, right? So penis envy, conversely, is a strain that has a ton of energy, and it's body load, it's physical body energy, right? And what that does in people who have a lot of anxiety is it manifests as more anxiety. It manifests as I'm not safe. This is scary. This is too much. And it distracts from the ability to work with what's being brought, cerebrally or spiritually. It does offer visuals, but for a lot of people, myself included, not a lot happening cerebrally, right? Not a lot of spirituality, not a lot of philosophy, not a lot of heartful connection, right? But if you want to trip and you want to go to having a psychedelic experience, some of those penis envy strains can be pretty phenomenal. Some people, though, very rarely, in my clients' experience at least, have decent experiences with penis envy strains. Some people resonate with them, right? But it's a lot of body load. For some, it feels like a hostile takeover is coming through them, like aliens or something coming out, right? And it really, I'm watching people. Um, I've sat with people now on over 160 macrodose journeys, and I'm watching people have repeated patterned experiences with being distracted by the body experience, and then it's pulling them. They're not able to. I mean, really, what they're meant to be doing is working with the body experience. But the strain of mushrooms, I think, can make that complicated in ways it doesn't have to be, right? So there's another strain that I've been working with. I had done some research, and then I had a client, actually a client and also a fellow provider, reach out, and it was actually a commission, asked me if I could grow this strain for her clients, because she had also done research and found that the research seemed compelling and wanted to see if it was true. So I went ahead and grew the strain, psilocybin natalensis, right? And natalensis is now become a superstar of all mushrooms. In fact, what I predict, it will be the number one mushroom for treatment. And going forth, for people with acute anxiety and trauma, this is a strain that has no body load. It's very mellow, and it has a lot of spiritual potential for connectivity. It's 2 times potency, and there's also several different varieties. So I'm currently in the middle of researching a couple different strains of natalensis, one of which is a little bit lower potency, one of which is much, much higher potency. You can even tell by the liquid culture in the jars. One of them's like kind of sparse and not super crazy, and the other one is like you can't even see through it. It's like clouded up. The mycelium is just super vigorous, very aggressive, and this is a very potent strain. But people are able to work with what's being brought through spiritually when their body's not being taken over in a scary, unfamiliar, and not good way, right? So natalensis also is a strain that is working through SSRIs, so you don't have to get off your SSRIs because 2 times potency, you're taking small amounts and it's still coming through whatever you're taking, right? People who I'm working with, clients who are taking multiple varieties of pharmaceuticals and having benefits on this strain, right? Yeah. There's also for natalensis, I would say it is also no nausea or minimal to no nausea. So it has these characteristics have been the last several months the most beneficial for clients that I've seen in 5 years. And I've tried 20 different strains with people, right? Other strains that are good, I love the albino strains. I feel that there's a correlation to mushrooms when they turn albino. They have a potency increase and a mysticism increase somehow. There's a supernatural aspect to all the albinos, especially albino A plus and also Shakti. Shakti is an albino Malabar strain, and that strain has really powerful spiritual. I watch people in journeys; they're otherworldly. It's cool to watch. It's cool to watch. They really get into some deep, deep spiritual places. with that strain. Yeah.
That's so cool. I'm really looking forward to the day when we have, like the scientific breakdown like we have now with cannabis, or we're starting to find out with cannabis, where we can look at these cannabinoid and terpene profiles and look at the very unique combinations and like, okay, well, here's what we probably know about this based on its, genetic markers. And I just can't wait for us to have that like more broad information about the mushroom strain so people can find what they're looking for. Because just like you said, like somebody that maybe is looking to microdose shrooms and work on their anxiety or boost their creativity certainly doesn't want a strain that's going to send them through freaking anxiety spirals.
No. And I talked with these people last night
Assured. Is that a lab?
in Massachusetts, and they're doing cannabis. And I talked to this guy, he's the owner, and they are, when this bill in the ballot is passed, I'm going to be working with these people to test mushrooms to figure out exactly what you're saying, so we can know specifics around, and also LSD, once that is also brought into the forefront and hopefully at some point legalized over MDMA. Sadly, that did not go through, but there's a reason for that. If you read the story through Microdose, the article in there is actually really quite concise around why it didn't really work. And I think Lycos dropped the ball on that, but that's a whole other conversation to have.
Yeah, that's a whole other conversation.
Whole other conversation.
Well, it's been so great chatting with you today. This feels like a perfect place to close our first conversation as we think about our next one, because I know we'll be connecting again. But yeah, my last question for you is, do you have any advice for someone who's preparing for their first mushroom journey?
I think what you're asking was, do I have advice for someone who's preparing for their first journey?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. The advice that I have is really to trust intuition. Our intuition is the thing that should guide us the most in this experience. And how I like to work with people is to really coach them and empower them to really lean into intuition and to trust themselves. When it comes to knowing what you want psychedelically, the dose amount is always an amount that you're going to innately know. And the way that you should figure that out is to imagine yourself in two different settings. The first setting is that you are able to go out walking into a swimming pool. You can walk in to waist deep on your smaller dose amount, right? Meso or lower. And you can enjoy the pool to your liking, and you can turn around and walk out of the pool. At a macro dose or higher amount, you're going to walk into that pool and you're going to keep walking. And at some point, you're going to become the pool. You're going to be the grout. You're going to be the water. You're going to be the floaties. You're going to be the kids in it. You're going to be everything about the pool. And you're the pool for as long as the pool wants you to be the pool. And if you don't like that idea, then a macrodose is not for you. And to please trust your intuition on that. You're going to learn also that this is a building of a relationship, and to start with building a small relationship first. This is an incremental process. So start in a way that makes you want to come back to it with respect and not terror, right? And with appreciation.
Oh, yeah. That's great advice.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for meeting with me today, Michou.
Woohoo!
This is wonderful.
Me too as well, Holly, and thank you for the opportunity to share some truth about this amazing process. Until next time.